My coffee was still hot when I saw my neighbor Tom pointing his phone at my garage wall, filming something. Through the kitchen window, I watched him zoom in on my dad's old police badge hanging there, the one he earned saving kids from a school fire back in '87. Something cold settled in my stomach. You know that feeling when you see trouble coming, but can't quite put your finger on it? That's when Karen Blackmore burst through my front door like she owned the place. No knock, no doorbell. Just Karen in her power suit, with two neighbors trailing behind her like attack dogs. "You're done lying to this neighborhood," she screamed, waving a piece of paper in my face. The homeowner association letterhead caught my eye, a formal demand to remove all unauthorized police symbolism from my property. My 17-year-old son, Michael, looked up from his cereal, still wearing yesterday's military surplus jacket. Karen pointed at him like he was evidence in a murder trial. "Your boy's been terrorizing children at the park, pretending to be a cop." Her voice carried that shrill edge she got when she thought she had someone cornered. Playing dress-up with fake badges and scaring little kids into obeying him. Tom stepped forward, still clutching his phone. "I got it all on video, Jack. Your son telling kids to move away from the playground equipment. Said it was a police order." The smell of burnt toast filled the air. Michael had forgotten his breakfast on the counter. I could see the confusion in his eyes, that 17-year-old panic when adults start yelling and pointing fingers. "That badge belonged to my father," I said, keeping my voice steady. "He was a real police officer, saved lives with it." Karen let out a harsh laugh. "Sure he was, just like your son's a real cop, right?" She pulled out her phone, swiping to a video. "Watch this." The screen showed Michael in his camouflage jacket, standing near the swing set at Riverside Park. A group of kids, maybe 8 or 9 years old, were climbing on the equipment. Michael's voice came through clearly. "Hey, you need to get down from there. That's not safe. Police orders." The kids scattered like startled birds. "There's your proof," Karen said, triumph dripping from every word. "Your family's been impersonating law enforcement to intimidate children. The association's calling an emergency meeting tonight, 7 o'clock. This ends now." She turned toward the door, then stopped. "Oh, and Jack, that fine starts at $2,000 for deceiving residents and endangering public safety." The paper crinkled as she slammed it on my kitchen table. Through the window, I watched more neighbors gathering on the sidewalk, their phones out, filming my house like it was a crime scene. Michael pushed his cereal bowl away, his hands shaking slightly. "Dad, I was just trying to help. Those kids were going to fall and get hurt." The front door clicked shut behind Karen and her crew, but their voices carried through the walls, loud enough for the whole street to hear. Words like fraud and dangerous and fake cop drifted through the morning air. I picked up the association notice, scanning the legal language about misrepresentation and immunity standards. The fine print mentioned possible criminal charges for impersonating an officer. Outside, car doors slammed as neighbors started their workday commutes, but I caught them slowing down as they passed my house, rubbernecking like they were driving past an accident. My phone buzzed with a text from my next-door neighbor, Sarah. "What's going on over there? Karen's telling everyone your son's been pretending to be police?" That's when I realized Karen wasn't just angry. She was methodical, strategic. This wasn't some spur-of-the-moment complaint. She'd been planning this attack. And somehow, my dad's badge had become ground zero. The Emergency Homeowner Association meeting felt like walking into an ambush. The community center's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting everything in that harsh white glow that makes everyone look guilty of something. Karen had strategically positioned herself at the front table with a stack of printed papers and that smug smile she wore when she thought she had someone beaten. Richard Stone, our association president, cleared his throat and adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses. The man looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, but Karen had him cornered too. Behind me, I could feel the weight of 30-something neighbors staring at the back of my head. "This emergency session concerns allegations of fraudulent police impersonation by the Morgan family," Richard announced, reading from a prepared statement. His voice cracked slightly on the word fraudulent. Karen stood up, her heels clicking against the linoleum floor. She'd changed into a different power suit, navy blue this time, like she was arguing a case in federal court. "Fellow residents, we have a serious problem." She gestured toward me like I was Exhibit A. Jack Morgan and his son have been using fake police credentials to intimidate children and manipulate our community. She pulled out a wireless presenter remote. The woman had come prepared for war. The wall screen lit up with photos of my garage, zoomed in on my father's badge. Then came Tom's video of Michael at the playground, followed by screenshots she'd apparently taken of other kids playing in the neighborhood. This isn't just about one incident, Karen continued. This is about a pattern of deception that puts our children at risk. That's when Dave Martinez, the old motorcycle mechanic from Oak Street, stood up. Dave had been fixing bikes in his garage for 20 years, minded his own business, never caused trouble for anyone. "I gotta say something here," Dave called out, his voice carrying that smoker's rasp. "Last month, Jack's boy came by when some teenagers were messing with my tools. Kid told them to move along, said he had police authority. My stomach dropped like I'd been sucker punched. Michael never mentioned anything about Dave's garage." "See?" Karen's voice rose with excitement. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. How many other incidents haven't been reported?" I turned to look at Dave, confusion written all over my face. He wouldn't meet my eyes, just stared at the floor like his boots were the most interesting things in the room. "Dave, what exactly did Michael say?" I asked. "He showed the boys some kind of badge, told them he was authorized to keep the peace in the neighborhood." Dave's voice got quieter with each word. I didn't think much of it at the time, but now... Karen pounced on that opening like a predator sensing wounded prey. "Now you realize you were dealing with someone impersonating law enforcement. Someone who could have escalated a simple teenage prank into something dangerous." Richard Stone shuffled his papers nervously. "Jack, do you have a response to these allegations?" I stood up, feeling the weight of every eye in that room. The air conditioning kicked on with a mechanical whir, and somewhere in the back, a baby started crying. "My father earned that badge 37 years ago," I said, my voice carrying further than I'd intended. "He pulled 8 children out of a burning school building on Maple Street, the same street where half of you live now." "That's a nice story," Karen interrupted. "But do you have any proof? Any documentation? Because what I have is video evidence of your son claiming police authority he doesn't possess." The room fell silent except for the humming fluorescent lights above us. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. "The badge is real," I said. "My father was a real officer." "Then prove it." Karen's smile widened. "Because until you can provide official documentation, this association has no choice but to assume you're both lying." That's when I noticed Sharon Blackmore sitting in the third row. Karen's identical twin sister, dressed in the exact same navy suit, with the same blonde hair styled the exact same way. She hadn't said a word all evening, just watched everything unfold with cold, calculating eyes. Richard Stone cleared his throat again. "Given the seriousness of these allegations and the potential safety concerns for our community, this board has no choice but to impose immediate sanctions." He read from his prepared statement. "The Morgan family is hereby fined $2,000 for misrepresentation and ordered to remove all police-related imagery from their property within 72 hours. Additionally, we're forwarding this matter to local law enforcement for potential criminal investigation." The words hit me like physical blows. Around the room, neighbors who'd waved to me for years now looked away, whispering among themselves. As people filed out, I caught snippets of conversation. Always seemed suspicious and poor kids in the neighborhood and can't trust anyone these days. But what stuck with me was Dave Martinez rushing past without making eye contact. Like he was afraid I might ask him more questions about what really happened at his garage. Something about his whole story didn't add up, but I couldn't put my finger on what. The headlights from someone's pickup swept through my living room as I sat alone at the kitchen table, fingers drumming against the scuffed wood. The association notice was spread out in front of me, black ink sharp and final. Michael was upstairs, not making a sound. All I could hear was the hum of the fridge and the echo of Karen's words on repeat. When the knock came, it was soft. 2 taps, then silence. I opened the door to find Emma Gray, our local librarian, standing there with an armful of overdue books and a nervous glance over her shoulder. Her auburn hair was messier than usual, cheeks flushed despite the cool night. "Mind if I come in, Jack? Just for a minute?" I let her past, and she set the books on the hallway table, fingers trembling a little as she stacked them. For a moment, neither of us spoke. She looked down at the worn linoleum, like it might give her strength. "You hear the verdict?" I asked, gesturing to the letter on the kitchen table. "Oh, everyone's heard," she said quietly. "Karen's made sure of that. There's a group chat now, rumor mill in overdrive." Emma paused, picking at a loose thread on her sweater. "But Jack, I was at the park that day. I saw what actually happened." I sat up. "Yeah?" She nodded, but her voice dropped to a whisper. "Karen and Sharon were there first. They were watching the kids. They told some of the older boys to start roughhousing near the swings, on purpose. When it got wild, Karen looked straight at Michael and said, 'Aren't you going to do something?' Like she was setting him up, testing him in front of everyone. I closed my eyes for a second, trying to steady my breathing. The smell of Emma's cheap floral laundry soap mixed with burnt toast from earlier, grounding me with something real. So Karen provoked the whole thing? Emma's eyes darted around the kitchen. She wanted a confrontation, Jack. Sharon was filming before Michael even walked over, and when Michael tried to help, to tell the kids to be careful, Sharon pushed the record button. The rest is what Karen sent to the whole neighborhood. She hesitated, fingers tightening around her library card. I know things about Karen, heard things over the years. She's got friends in the city offices. If I go public, I'll lose my job. Her voice caught, shame and anxiety twisted together. I leaned back, pressure building in my chest. "Why are you telling me this?" Emma took a deep breath, voice firmer. "Because you deserve to know. Because Michael's a good kid. And because someone has to stand up to her." She glanced up, meeting my eyes. "But it can't be me. She'd ruin me, Jack. I'm sorry." For a moment, the urge to lash out was powerful, to say something cruel out of pure frustration. But seeing Emma's fear, her frail courage, knocked the wind out of my anger. I just nodded. "You did more than most, Emma." Before she left, she stopped at the door, voice almost lost over her shoulder. "Check the archives, Jack. There's an article from '87 about your dad, the night of the school fire. You might find what you need." She disappeared into the shadows, leaving the faint trace of cheap perfume and secrets hanging in the air. I closed the door, locking it tight behind her. Upstairs, Michael called down, voice small and brittle. "Dad, am I in trouble?" I took the stairs two at a time, finding him hunched at his desk, badge in hand, the old metal gleaming in the lamplight. He wouldn't meet my gaze. "Listen, Mike, people are going to say things. Most of them don't know the first thing about who you really are, who your grandfather was." My voice broke, but I pressed on, refusing to let the fear win. "You only did what you thought was right. That's all you can do in this life." He blinked fast, eyes shining. "But what if I made it worse?" I squeezed his shoulder, letting the fear and pride and fury swirl together until I could speak. "If the world's going to judge you, at least let them judge the truth, not Karen's version of it." Somewhere outside, a car door slammed and a dog barked twice, sharp against the muffled quiet. The night felt heavy, but for the first time since morning, I had something close to hope. Maybe it wasn't much, but it was a start. And as I stood by Michael's door, watching him fall asleep with that badge tucked under his pillow, I made myself a promise. If Karen wanted a war, she was going to get one. You ever feel like you're drowning in other people's lies, and the only thing that can save you is the truth no one wants to hear? That was me, in that quiet house, staring out at the street, wondering where to strike next. The morning sun hit my front window like a punch, painting harsh yellow lines across the floor. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Karen's face twisted with glee, and Michael shrinking under all those eyes. My hands smelled like stale coffee and old metal from turning the badge in my fingers till dawn. Sometimes, the only thing keeping you upright is spite. First stop, the library. The place smelled like dust, printer ink, and lemon cleaner. A forgotten sanctuary, except for Emma, head down behind the reference desk. She didn't look up, but slid a faded manila folder my way as I passed. "Check page 12, she whispered. Her voice shook so slight it barely wavered a stray hair. I ducked into a back corner and pulled out the article. There was my dad, uniform crisp despite the soot, arms around a rescued girl in pajamas. The caption named him, Officer James Morgan, saves child from Maple School fire, 1987. In the corner, a girl hugged a battered stuffed rabbit, blonde. eyes huge with terror. The name read, Karen, last name withheld by request, age 10. I stared at the faces, the words, until my vision blurred. All this spectacle, because Karen's been haunted for almost 40 years. That badge, for her, wasn't just metal. It was memory and shame, twisted together until she blamed us for every pang. My phone buzzed, snapping me back. A message from Richard Stone, Association President. Emergency law enforcement visit scheduled today. Badge will be confiscated for evidence. Back home, patrol lights washed my lawn in blue and red. 2 officers stood on my stoop, hands at their belts. Karen pacing behind them like a warden watching inmates. Michael froze by the stairs, his breath coming shallow. "Sir, we have a report of police impersonation," one officer said. His tone was careful, almost bored, but his fingers twitched near the holster. I handed over the badge with a steady hand. Family heirloom, never used for anything but memory. Karen's voice sliced through. "He's lying! His boy wears it around, bullies other kids." Arms folded, lips tight, standing like she expected applause. The younger officer checked the engraving. "Doesn't match our current design, but we'll take it in for evidence." He gave me a look, tired, maybe sympathetic, maybe nothing. Michael clung to the banister, knuckles white. "Dad, what happens to Grandpa's badge?" "We'll get it back," I said, not believing it. Once the car pulled away, Karen lingered. "This isn't over, Jack, not by a long shot." She grinned, and I caught the glint of something cruel. Satisfaction, maybe, or old hurt. As she turned, Sharon, always silent in Karen's shadow, pressed a fresh envelope into our mailbox, lips twisted in a private smile. Michael watched from the door, jaw set hard. She won't stop, will she? Not till she gets what she wants. I looked at my son, wondered how much damage a person could take before they changed for good. That evening, as the house settled and the world outside went quiet, Michael asked, "Does fighting even matter? They're all against us." I sat at the foot of his bed. "You want to give up? Or do you want them to remember they don't get to rewrite our story?" In that silence, a new resolve bloomed. I could feel it, like coals catching from the leftover anger. Some battles you don't pick, but you finish them all the same. Funny how the smallest light burns hottest in the dark. The courthouse smelled like disinfectant and broken dreams. I sat in the waiting area, watching the clock tick past 9:30, while my lawyer shuffled through papers with all the enthusiasm of a man attending his own funeral. Karen sat across the aisle in her courtroom armor. Black blazer, pearl necklace, that victorious smile she wore like war paint. "Morgan versus Riverside Homeowner Association," the bailiff called out. My stomach dropped to my shoes. The judge looked like he'd heard 1,000 cases just like this one. Tired eyes, gray mustache. The kind of man who'd stop believing in justice somewhere around case number 500. Karen's lawyer stood first, a sharp-suited woman who spoke like she was reading from a teleprompter. "Your Honor, this case involves clear misrepresentation and potential endangerment of minors through fraudulent police impersonation." She clicked through slides on her tablet. Michael's face filled the courtroom screen, frozen mid-sentence at the playground. Then came photos of our garage, the badge hanging there like evidence of some terrible crime. The defendant's family has systematically deceived residents, using fake police credentials to establish authority over neighborhood children, the lawyer continued. This behavior represents a clear threat to community safety. My lawyer, bless his overwhelmed heart, tried his best. He talked about family heirlooms and misunderstandings, about teenage boys trying to help. But every word sounded weak against Karen's polished performance. Then came the witnesses. Dave Martinez took the stand, fidgeting with his baseball cap. Under oath, his story got even more detailed. "The boy showed me this badge, said he was keeping order in the neighborhood," Dave testified. "Seemed official to me. I thought maybe his dad was training him for some kind of junior police program." I wanted to stand up, to scream that Dave was lying through his teeth, but my lawyer's hand pressed down on my shoulder, keeping me planted in my seat. Karen testified next, her voice dripping with concern for the community. "Mr. Morgan's son has been using police authority to control children's behavior. As parents, we trusted that authority was legitimate." The judge listened with the expression of a man who'd already made up his mind. When he spoke, His words hit like hammer blows. The court finds sufficient evidence of misrepresentation. The badge will remain in police custody pending further investigation. Mr. Morgan, you're hereby enjoined from displaying any law enforcement symbols on your property. Karen's smile could have powered the whole courthouse. Outside, she cornered me on the steps, Sharon flanking her like a bodyguard. $2,000, Jack, plus my legal fees, plus you get to explain to Michael why his grandfather's heroic badge belongs to the county now. I watched her walk away, heels clicking against concrete like a countdown timer. In my pocket, my phone buzzed with notifications, text messages from neighbors, Facebook posts, the neighborhood group chat lighting up with Karen's victory lap. But as I stood there, something nagged at me. Dave's testimony had been too smooth, too rehearsed. The way he wouldn't look at me during cross-examination. The way Karen had smiled when he spoke. That evening, Michael found me in the garage, staring at the empty hook where the badge used to hang. The metal looked cold and abandoned, like a grave marker. "They took Grandpa's badge," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "Yeah, they did." "Does that mean Grandpa wasn't really a hero?" I turned to look at my son, 17 years old, and learning that sometimes the world doesn't give a damn about truth. Your grandfather pulled 8 kids out of a burning building. A piece of metal doesn't change that. But even as I said it, I felt the weight of defeat settling in my chest. Karen had won. The badge was gone. The fine would drain our savings, and everyone in the neighborhood now looked at us like we were con artists. Michael kicked at a paint can, sending it clanging across the concrete. "I hate her." "I know, son, I know." Outside, car doors slammed as neighbors came home from work. But none of them waved anymore. None of them stopped to chat. We'd become ghosts in our own neighborhood. That night, lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling and wondered if this was what giving up felt like. When the fight goes out of you and all that's left is the bitter taste of someone else's victory. But just before sleep took me, I remembered Emma's words about checking the archives, about finding what I needed. Maybe the fight wasn't over yet. Maybe it was just beginning. Have you ever lost something so completely that winning it back becomes the only thing keeping you alive? The library's basement smelled like old newspapers and forgotten stories. Emma had left me the key in a hiding spot behind the water fountain, her small act of rebellion that could cost her everything. The archives stretched back decades, yellowing copies of the Riverside Gazette stacked in boxes that hadn't seen daylight in years. I found 1987 in the third row, my fingers trembling as I pulled out the September issues. There it was. Front page, bold headlines, local officer saves 8 in school blaze. But this wasn't the sanitized version from the library's main collection. This one had the full story. The fire started during an evening PTA meeting. An electrical short in the old building's wiring sent flames racing through the halls while families were trapped inside. My father had been first on scene. No backup, no equipment except his flashlight and pure determination. The survivor list made my blood run cold. Karen Blackmore, age 10, rescued from second-floor classroom, along with twin sister Sharon Blackmore. There was a photo I'd never seen, both girls clinging to my father's jacket, faces streaked with soot and tears. At the bottom of the article, a quote from their mother. "Officer Morgan risked his life for our babies. Karen keeps asking when she can thank him properly." I sat back in the metal chair, pieces falling into place. Karen remembered. She'd always remembered. But somewhere along the way, gratitude had curdled into something toxic. Maybe guilt. Maybe shame at owing her life to the man whose badge now hung in an evidence locker. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Meet me at Murphy's bar. Come alone." 20 minutes later, I found Emma hunched over a whiskey in the corner booth, hands shaking as she nursed the amber liquid. She looked like she'd aged 5 years since I'd seen her at the library. "I can't do this anymore," she said without looking up. The lying, the pretending I don't know what's really happening. I slid into the seat across from her. The bar's dim lighting cast shadows across her face, making her look hollow and desperate. "Karen's been planning this for months," Emma whispered. "She's got files on everyone in the neighborhood, looking for leverage, for pressure points." She pulled a flash drive from her purse, sliding it across the scarred wooden table. I copied what I could before I lost my nerve. "What's on there?" "Everything. The real video from the park, the unedited version showing her and Sharon setting Michael up, records of her complaints to City Hall, trying to get your property rezoned, even correspondence with Dave Martinez. My pulse quickened. Dave's working with her? Emma nodded miserably. She's paying his legal fees from an old DUI case. In exchange, he testifies to whatever story she needs. She finished her whiskey in one burning gulp. But there's more, Jack. Something I found by accident. She pulled out a manila folder, hands trembling as she opened it. Inside were photocopied documents, insurance claims, medical records, financial statements. Karen's been filing fraudulent insurance claims for years, car accidents that never happened, property damage from storms that missed us completely. She's made over $40,000 in the past 3 years alone. I stared at the evidence spread across the table. Why are you showing me this? Because tomorrow night, she's holding another association meeting. She wants to call for your family's removal from the neighborhood entirely. Emma's voice cracked. And because I saw the look on Michael's face at the last meeting, that boy doesn't deserve what she's doing to him. She stood to leave, then paused. Jack, your father saved my uncle that night too. He was the janitor who got trapped in the basement. I never forgot that. After she left, I sat alone with the documents and the flash drive, feeling the weight of possibility and danger pressing down on my shoulders. Outside, Riverside was settling into its evening routine. Porch lights coming on, families gathering for dinner, the comfortable rhythm of suburban life. But in Murphy's bar, surrounded by evidence of Karen's corruption, I felt something I hadn't experienced since this whole nightmare began. Hope. Not the desperate kind that makes you reckless. The cold, calculating kind that makes you dangerous. Karen wanted to destroy my family over a 40-year-old guilt she couldn't face. She'd used her position, her connections, even her own sister to wage war against a memory she couldn't escape. Tomorrow night, she'd learn something about the boy whose life her victim had saved. I was my father's son, and I was done playing defense. What would you do with evidence that could destroy your enemy, but might cost an innocent woman her job? The community center buzzed with more tension than I'd ever felt in that room. Karen had outdone herself. She'd packed the place with faces I didn't recognize, people from other neighborhoods who had no business voting on Riverside matters. Her insurance fraud money at work, no doubt, buying herself an audience for the final act. Sharon sat in the front row, identical to her sister down to the pearl earrings, filming everything on her phone like she was documenting history. Richard Stone looked like a man being led to his own execution, shuffling papers with shaking hands. Tonight, we vote on the Morgan family's removal from our community, Karen announced, her voice carrying that prosecutorial tone she'd perfected. For the safety of our children and the integrity of our neighborhood. I stood up, feeling every eye in that room laser in on me. The weight of Emma's flash drive in my pocket felt like carrying a loaded gun. Before you vote, I said, my voice cutting through the murmur of the crowd, I think everyone should see what really happened at Riverside Park. I'd spent all day setting this up, borrowed a projector from my old job, convinced Tom to let me use his laptop, even called in a favor with Michael's computer teacher to help edit the footage. The screen at the front of the room flickered to life. The unedited video played in crystal clarity, Karen and Sharon positioning themselves strategically, Sharon pointing at the playground equipment, clearly directing the older boys to start roughhousing, Karen's voice audible now. Go on, make some noise, get them riled up. Then came the moment she spotted Michael. Aren't you going to do something about this? She called out to him, loud enough for everyone to hear. When Michael approached the kids to calm them down, Sharon started recording, but the timestamp showed she'd been filming for over 5 minutes already. The room fell silent except for the whir of the projector fan. This was a setup, I announced, letting that sink in. Karen Blackmore deliberately created a dangerous situation to entrap my son. Karen shot to her feet, face flushed with rage. That video is fake, doctored. You can't trust anything this man produces. Actually, we can, said a new voice from the back of the room. Detective Luis Hernandez stepped into the light, badge gleaming on his belt, followed by 2 uniformed officers. The crowd stirred uneasily, sensing the shift in atmosphere. Mrs. Blackmore, we've been investigating your insurance claims for the past 6 months, Detective Hernandez announced. 43 fraudulent filings totaling over $40,000 in false payouts. Sharon's phone clattered to the floor as she tried to stand, but one of the officers was already moving toward her. Sharon Blackmore, you're under arrest as an accessory to insurance fraud and conspiracy to file false claims. Karen's composure cracked like thin ice. This is harassment. This is... Ma'am, you have the right to remain silent, Detective Hernandez said as handcuffs clicked around her wrists. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. The crowd erupted in chaos. Neighbors who'd been ready to vote me out 5 minutes ago now stared in shock as the Blackmore twins were led away in handcuffs. Richard Stone sat frozen behind his table, gavel forgotten in his hand. Dave Martinez tried to slip out the back exit, but I called his name loud enough for everyone to hear. Dave, before you go, why don't you tell everyone about that $500 Karen paid you to lie about Michael? He stopped like he'd hit a wall, shoulders slumping in defeat. I'm sorry, Jack. I needed the money from my lawyer. She said it was just neighborhood politics. Nothing serious would happen. As the police cars pulled away with their blue lights flashing, I walked to the front of the room. The projector still hummed, casting my shadow large against the white screen. 37 years ago, my father pulled 8 children out of a burning school, I said, my voice carrying to every corner of the room. 2 of those children were Karen and Sharon Blackmore. He saved their lives. I pulled out the old newspaper clipping, holding it up for everyone to see. Maybe Karen couldn't live with owing that debt. Maybe saying thank you was harder than trying to destroy the memory of the man who saved her. The room was dead silent now. Even the baby who'd been crying earlier had gone quiet. My father earned that badge through courage and sacrifice. My son tried to live up to that example by protecting other kids just like his grandfather did. I looked around the room at faces that had judged us, condemned us, written us off. The badge belongs to my family. It always has. Richard Stone cleared his throat, his voice barely audible. All in favor of dropping the charges against the Morgan family? Every hand in the room went up. 2 days later, Detective Hernandez personally returned my father's badge, now cleared of all evidence holds. Michael hung it back on the garage wall with ceremony, his hands steady and proud. But the victory felt hollow. Emma had lost her job, Karen's final revenge, carried out through her connections before the arrest. The neighborhood would never be the same. Trust, once broken, leaves scars that never fully heal. That evening, as Michael and I sat on the front porch, watching the sunset paint our street gold, he asked the question I'd been dreading. Was it worth it, Dad? All the fighting? I looked at the badge gleaming through the garage window, thought about my father pulling children from flames, about the price of standing up when it would be easier to back down. Your grandfather didn't save those kids because it was easy, I said finally. He did it because someone had to. Sometimes that's all the reason you get. The street settled into its evening quiet, porch lights coming on one by one, families gathering for dinner behind warm windows. We'd won our war, but wars always cost more than you expect to pay. Still, some fights are worth having, some badges are worth defending, and sometimes the only way to honor the dead is to refuse to let the living forget what courage actually looks like. Even if it means standing alone in a room full of people who'd rather believe a comfortable lie than an inconvenient truth.